Welcome back to Zodiac Talks Tarot, the space where astrology is treated not as cheap fortune cookie riddles or vague horoscope cliches, but as a living map of the human experience, full of detours, revelations, and truths that make us laugh at ourselves as much as they make us pause and reflect. My name is your longtime guide and researcher, someone who has walked these star-strewn roads for decades, weaving together the wisdom of astrology, the insights of psychology, the lessons of society, and the timeless compassion of Buddhist philosophy. Today we turn our gaze towards Sagittarius in the month of October 2025, and let me tell you plainly, this will not be just another ordinary stretch of 31 days. This month is poised to be one of the most extraordinary, liberating, and defining chapters of your life. Not because everything will suddenly turn flawless, but because October will be raw, authentic, unfiltered, and deeply real. It is the month where your restless fire finally stops flickering in the wind and begins to burn with steady purpose. Imagine yourself a few weeks from now, standing at the edge of November, looking back on October as though you had just returned from a pilgrimage, not the kind that takes you to a Himalayan monastery or a desert shrine, but one that led you straight into the temple of your own soul. You'll feel a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, like a traveler who walked farther than expected but discovered treasures hidden along the way. And in that stillness you'll whisper to yourself, perhaps with a smile and perhaps with tears, that was the month I stopped running away, and finally started living. Sagittarius, you know better than most what it feels like to carry an itch in the soul. It's the whisper that tells you, this isn't enough, there's more beyond this horizon. In August and September, that whisper was almost a roar. Some of you may remember nights spent wide awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and asking silently, if this is all life has to offer, then why do I still feel so trapped? It wasn't boredom. It wasn't dissatisfaction in the simple sense. It was a deeper kind of unrest, what psychologists call existential restlessness, and what Buddhist teachers would describe as the subtle stirring of your true nature, calling you to wake up from the illusion of comfort. You see, your sign is forever tied to the seeker, the philosopher, the archer who aims for truths bigger than any one person's story. And yet, here lies the paradox, for years you have mistaken running for seeking. You thought freedom meant saying no to commitment, packing your bags before anyone could expect you to stay, moving faster than life could catch you. But in reality, that wasn't freedom, it was fear dressed up as independence, like a horse bolting from the stable, not out of joy but out of panic. You weren't escaping into adventure, you were escaping from stillness. And let's be honest, Sagittarius, standing still has always been your least favorite sport. Ask you to run a marathon, you'll shrug and say sure. Ask you to sit in silence for 10 minutes, and suddenly your shoes are missing and you're halfway to another continent. October will break that illusion. It will show you that stillness isn't a prison but a launching pad, that roots don't limit your freedom but allow you to grow higher and stronger, that true independence isn't about rejecting bonds but about choosing them with clarity and purpose. This is the month where you learn that your arrow cannot fly forever if it's never drawn back and anchored first. The restlessness you've carried, the frustration of the past months, the feeling that you were forever chasing a moving horizon, these weren't failures. They were the bowstring being pulled back, preparing you for the shot of your life. And October is when you release that arrow into your true north. The question is, will you have the courage to let it fly? Because if you do, what awaits you on the other side is not chaos, not fear, not more of the same, but liberation, purpose, and fire. October is not here to hand you a brand new self, it is here to strip away the costumes of avoidance and reveal the authentic Sagittarius beneath, the seeker who knows the difference between escape and truth, the philosopher who laughs at their own contradictions, the adventurer who finally realizes the greatest journey was inward all along. And if that sounds like heavy work, remember this, Sagittarians always bring humor to their quests. You might roll your eyes at your past tendency to confuse running with freedom, laugh at the irony of needing to sit still to actually move forward, and even crack a joke mid-epiphany. That's the beauty of you, Sagittarius. You find truth, but you never forget to laugh at yourself on the way there. And in October 2025, that laughter will echo louder than ever, because it will come from the place of someone who finally feels free. Think of your life these past months as a bowstring being pulled back, Sagittarius. Every restless night, every day where you felt caged in by routine or starved for adventure, every moment when you wondered why nothing seemed to satisfy, these were not wasted struggles. They were the slow, steady drawing of that bow, tighter and tighter, until you could almost hear it strain. You probably thought the universe had forgotten about you, or worse, was punishing you with monotony. But the truth is more elegant, more cosmic. All that tension was energy being stored, preparing you for release. October is the moment when the arrow finally leaves your hands, not to land in someone else's story, not to chase someone else's dream, but to shoot straight toward your own true north. And once it flies, you'll realize how heavy the bowstring had been, how much effort you had been spending holding yourself back under the illusion of freedom. Because let's be honest, Sagittarius, you have a history of confusing distraction with liberation. You run fast, you change scenery, you dodge commitments, and for a while, it feels exhilarating. But after the thrill wears off, you often end up exactly where you started, restless, skeptical, half amused and half disappointed with yourself. October changes that dynamic. This time, your movement will not be about escape but about arrival, and for once, you won't feel like a tourist in your own life. This is also where the narrative of the chosen ones becomes important. You know how some people stumble into their big moments by accident, like tripping into destiny the way you trip on the corner of a rug? That won't be you. For Sagittarius, October will feel deliberate, almost fated, as if life itself selected this chapter to finally crack open the shell you've been hiding in. You'll look back and realize that the cages you've lived in weren't imposed by others. They were your own creation, constructed from the commitments you avoided, the truths you sidestepped, and the deep suspicion you've always had toward permanence. You were afraid that if you stood still, you'd lose yourself. But ironically, it was the running that was making you disappear. October 2025 is your unveiling, the month when the curtain finally lifts, and you see yourself not as a shadow darting between distractions but as the archer you were always meant to be, aiming with precision, finally ready to release. Now, what happens after the arrow flies? That's when your inner teacher awakens. Every zodiac sign carries a hidden gift, something it's almost embarrassed to admit because it feels too raw, too powerful. For Sagittarius, that gift is perspective. While others fuss over details, you zoom out instinctively to ask the bigger questions. What does this mean? Where is this all going? What story is life trying to tell? But here's the funny part: you've spent years trying to disguise that gift. You laugh it off, toss out a sarcastic remark, or shrug like it's nothing. You tell people you're just daydreaming, when in reality, your mind is sketching out constellations they can't even see. Sometimes you hide because you don't want to look like the idealist in the room, or worse, the one who makes everyone else uncomfortable with questions that can't be answered by a quick Google search. But October? That's when the mask comes off. The fire of truth inside you will push through whatever filters you've been hiding behind. You'll start saying things that make people stop mid-scroll, mid-sentence, mid-latte sip, and actually think. And when you speak, something almost shocking will happen: people will listen. They'll lean in, not because you're louder, but because your words carry weight, born of lived experience and restless searching. Sagittarius, your philosophical fire is contagious. When you ignite it, others feel it too. They're reminded that life isn't just bills, meetings, and inboxes. They remember there's meaning out there, and maybe even in here, within themselves. And instead of feeling like a burden, this role will feel like home. You won't be the clown who hides wisdom behind jokes, nor the runaway who dodges depth. You'll be the guide, the teacher, the friend who reminds people that there's a larger picture worth seeing, even if it's messy and imperfect. October invites you into that calling, not as a responsibility that weighs you down but as a purpose that lights you up. And yes, you'll probably still crack jokes along the way because no matter how deep you go, Sagittarius, you'll never lose that playful edge. You might deliver a life-altering truth and then wink, saying, "Don't worry, I'll be profound again after lunch." That's exactly why people trust you. You don't preach, you don't posture, you share wisdom with a laugh, and in October, that balance of fire and humor will become your signature. You're not just living your truth, you're teaching us all how to find our own. When we look at Sagittarius in October 2025, we must break it down more precisely, because not all Sagittarians walk the same path. The sign itself is unified by the hunger for meaning, freedom, and expansion, but the way this hunger reveals itself depends on when in the season you were born. If you came into the world between November 22nd and December 1st, this month will feel like a cosmic puzzle finally solved. You've spent years collecting scattered ideas, half-formed philosophies, and those wild daydreams that people around you often dismissed as nonsense or too impractical. And yet, in October, you will see them rearrange themselves into a coherent map. It's like realizing you weren't wandering aimlessly, you were simply learning how to read the constellations that had been above your head the whole time. The very thoughts that once seemed like random sparks will begin to align like stars, forming a pattern, showing you a clear sense of direction. You'll laugh at how you doubted yourself for so long, wondering if you were just chasing illusions, only to discover that your so-called illusions were guiding principles all along. That's the Sagittarian paradox. What you call a fantasy today often becomes someone else's reality tomorrow. For those born between December 2nd and December 11th, the lesson is subtler but no less transformative. Your journey in October is about discovering that you don't have to leave everything behind to find freedom. For you, the adventure will not be measured in flight tickets or miles traveled, but in the ability to find wonder in the everyday. Cooking a simple dinner becomes a quest for beauty. A casual chat with a colleague becomes a moment of teaching and reflection. Even doing the laundry might become a chance to meditate on impermanence, as you watch socks disappear into the void, never to return, proof that the universe does indeed hold mysteries beyond our comprehension. Your optimism, often bright and explosive like fireworks, will transform into a steady campfire glow, something that doesn't burn out after one night but sustains you and warms those around you. Instead of seeing everyday life as a cage, you will see it as fertile ground for wisdom. And in that shift, your restlessness will quiet, replaced by a new kind of resilience. Now, for those Sagittarians born between December 12th and December 21st, October comes bearing the promise of abundance. And no, not the hollow abundance peddled in self-help seminars with glittery slogans about manifesting a yacht through positive thinking. This is the real kind, career opportunities that actually expand your influence and fund your passions, journeys that don't just stamp your passport but expand your worldview, encounters that open doors to meaningful connections. The dream of having a life both prosperous and purposeful will stop being a dream and begin taking the shape of a path laid out right in front of you. Suddenly, the idea of combining your love of truth with the material resources to sustain it will no longer feel impossible. It will feel natural, like the reward for years of wandering, questioning, and refusing to settle for a shallow existence. This is not a lottery win. It's something better, it's alignment. Proof that when you live authentically, prosperity comes as a byproduct rather than a prize. Yet no matter when you were born in the Sagittarian season, October 2025 shares one message for all of you: it is time to break the old illusion. For too long you equated avoidance with freedom. You convinced yourself that by never committing too deeply, never staying too long, never letting anyone or anything tie you down, you were protecting your spirit. But the price was heavy. You weren't protecting your freedom, you were avoiding your depth. In Buddhist teachings there's a phrase, patient endurance without clinging. That's the energy of October. It's not about racing toward the next thrill or trying to outrun responsibility, but about the steady courage to live moment by moment, truthfully, without attachment to escape. And when you step into that space, something almost miraculous happens, your external life reorganizes overnight. People who resonate with your truth suddenly appear. Opportunities align with your highest values. Life stops feeling like an endless treadmill where you're sweating and panting but getting nowhere. Instead, it feels like an expedition, sometimes hard, sometimes unpredictable, but always meaningful. And if that weren't enough, October will dazzle you with synchronicities and surprises. If you've ever had the uncanny experience of a book literally falling off a shelf into your hands, or a stranger saying something that answers a question you hadn't spoken aloud, prepare for a flood of such moments. October will be filled with these cosmic winks. Think of it as the year of triumph, 2025 finally cashing in its promise. Every step you take in alignment with your truth will be mirrored by the universe in ways you cannot predict. A mentor may appear just as you're about to give up on a dream. A casual encounter might open a door you didn't know existed. Projects you thought were dead ends could suddenly blossom at exactly the right time. And the best part? You won't have to chase or force any of it. For once, Sagittarius, life won't feel like a battle you have to win, but like a dance you've been invited to join. You'll realize that when you finally stop resisting your own authenticity, the universe stops resisting you. Instead of conspiring against you, life conspires with you, and that shift makes all the difference. October for Sagittarius is not only about breakthroughs, doors opening, and wild opportunities arriving as if the universe suddenly remembered your name, it is also, perhaps most importantly, about healing. And that healing does not come wrapped in dramatic fireworks or in neon signs pointing to a revelation. It comes quietly, steadily, as you begin to release the weight you've carried for years, the old cynicism that crept in after too many disappointments, the sting of being misunderstood, the wound of being told more than once that you were too much. These are not small scars, they shape the way you move through the world, even when you pretend they don't. Yet October 2025 offers the kind of energy that allows you to look at those scars differently. Instead of seeing them as evidence of failure, you will begin to see them as proof of endurance, as reminders that you survived. And with that survival comes forgiveness, first for yourself. You'll find yourself letting go of the guilt for all the times you ran away, for all the commitments you dodged, for the intimacy you avoided because you thought freedom would vanish if you let someone stand too close. Forgiveness has a strange alchemy. It doesn't erase the past, but it makes the past stop strangling the present. With forgiveness comes a lightness, even humor. You will laugh at your younger self, who thought freedom meant ghosting responsibilities or disappearing when things got hard. You'll chuckle at how seriously you once believed that intimacy was a trap, when in truth it was fear disguised as independence. And you'll realize that the real adventure was never about running away from anything, it was always about running toward your own truth, toward that deeper place where freedom is rooted in authenticity rather than avoidance. When that kind of healing settles into your spirit, people will notice the difference before you even open your mouth. Your presence changes. Your eyes carry a shine that no external achievement can fake. Your laughter is deeper, richer, not forced or nervous but rising naturally like a song from within. Even your words sharpen, not in a cutting way, but in clarity, because they come from a place of alignment. You will feel alive in a way you haven't in years, and that aliveness radiates out, touching everyone around you. The poet in me would say it is like a flame that finally remembers it was never meant to be hidden under a bushel. Now the question remains, why October 2025? Why does this month carry such significance? The answer is that nothing in your past few years was wasted, even if it often felt like you were taking wrong turns, walking into dead ends, or circling the same ground over and over. Every detour was fuel being collected. Every heartbreak was teaching you compassion. Every restless night was a form of preparation. You were not lost, you were the archer learning patience. You were the seeker gathering wisdom. You were the philosopher waiting for the right moment when words would matter, when timing would be precise, when the arrow could finally be released. And October is that ignition point. It is the month when the bowstring, drawn back for so long, finally lets go. That is why it feels so different, why it carries such clarity. And because we cannot talk about Sagittarius without humor, let us acknowledge what half of you are probably thinking right now. Cool, so should I book a one-way ticket to Bali? Ah, Sagittarius, always ready to pack a bag and run toward the horizon. But here's the twist, this time, the lesson is not about escape. It is about presence. The Bali you are searching for can be found in your own backyard, if you are willing to see it. It is in the grocery store line where patience is tested, in the awkward silence of a Zoom meeting where someone forgets to mute, in the small but profound humanity of everyday life. The wisdom you crave has never been only on mountaintops, it is also in the ordinary moments you often rush past. And yet, I won't deny it, if a flight deal pops up, you'll probably still book it. Just promise yourself that when you sit on the plane, you'll meditate on the journey instead of binge-watching 4 seasons of some space opera where the characters spend more time running in circles than actually finding their freedom. As we reach the conclusion, it must be said, October 2025 will not hand you a shiny new identity wrapped with a bow. It will not transform you into someone else. Instead, it will reveal the self you've always been, the explorer, the teacher, the wild-hearted philosopher who doesn't just talk about freedom but embodies it. This is your moment, Sagittarius. The year of triumph 2025 was never just a nice phrase, it was a prophecy, and October is the month it arrives in full. Step boldly into it. Speak your truth without apology. Stop shrinking your vision to make others comfortable. The world does not need you to dim your fire, it needs you to blaze. And when you do, something remarkable will happen. You will inspire others not to follow you blindly, but to find their own arrows, their own stars, their own true north. That is the power of living authentically. It multiplies itself, it awakens others, and it spreads light in places you may never even see. So, Sagittarius, October is your masterpiece. Will you dare to live it? Will you trust that the arrow you've been holding for so long is finally ready to fly? I believe you will. And when you do, you will laugh, you will heal, you will expand, and you will remind the rest of us that freedom is not a place you reach but a way you walk every day. And as we close, I invite you to take this journey with us, not just in thought but in community. If you feel the fire stirring already, if you sense that this reading touched something true in your spirit, let us know. Share your thoughts, claim your destiny, and stand in your truth. Like this video, share it with others who need the reminder that October can be the month of liberation, and subscribe to Zodiac Talks Tarot so that together we can continue exploring the wisdom of the stars with honesty, depth, humor, and the timeless guidance that both astrology and philosophy provide. This is not just about prediction, it is about participation. And Sagittarius, your participation begins now.